The Grinch is a great painting to get into the holiday spirit. This is an awesome class for kids. I put a lot of art science and art theory into this. They're going to have a really good time. Plus, they're going to learn a lot of stuff and get into this Christmas spirit. This is also a good one for grown-ups who haven't painted in a million years. You'll be able to paint this. And how cute on the wall. And especially, I'm sure you saw the Max painting, you know, Grinch's dog. That one and this one together will look so cute together in your living room. You're going to love it. Everybody that comes over to your house is going to just totally love it. So this is a good one. You're going to like it. And thank you so much for patronizing my business. I greatly, truly appreciate it. And please leave me a review. Let me know what you think. And I'll get painting with you soon. Before I begin, I cover the table with paper to make sure that the paint doesn't destroy the table. I also have clothes on right now that I don't mind getting paint on. Paint does stain forever when it dries. I will be using thick-bodied acrylic paint. If you have oils, they can work just the same. The only difference is they will take longer to dry because they are oil-based and not water-based. I took off all my jewelry and I have my hair tied back. I recommend that you do the same so that way you don't get paint everywhere you don't want to get paint. I will be painting on a 12 by 16 inch canvas. It is stretched over a wood frame. These are my preferred type of canvases. Notice how they're stapled and they're already pre-stretched. So this means I don't have to buy extra pieces or hardware or anything to be able to hang it on the wall. And it's also very lightweight for hanging on the wall. These are my preferred canvases. If you use a flat canvas, a good way that you can hang it onto the wall is by using sticky Velcro or to buy a frame. You can paint this on paper if you like to practice. Sometimes I do that with my paintings. Well, I'll practice them on paper, and then when I really like what I got going on, then I'll try it again and I'll do it on canvas. If you prefer not to paint on canvas, you could paint on wood. You can paint, I've seen this painting done on Christmas tree bulbs, all different kinds of fun little cool things you can paint on. So use your imagination. And everything that I'm going to teach you through this class, just use the same principles, the same techniques, same everything. Just instead of using it on a canvas, you're doing it on whatever thing you're doing it on. Okay, so I always use a paper towel for my palette. This makes it way easier for me so I don't have to clean up and do dishes and clean all of the paint off of the palette. I can just throw the paper plate away when I'm done. Please do not use styrofoam. Styrofoam's really bad for the environment. I also use a ton of paper towels so I can clean my brushes and any spills. I like using my handy dandy dryer to help the painting dry faster. I like to dry the painting between the different steps to make it easier and faster. I don't want this painting to take 10 hours. I want to have fun and sweet and to the point. So 2 to 3 hours should be a good length of time, and the dryer will help so that we can achieve that goal. That way we make sure that we finish the painting when we start it. Please don't start a painting and never finish it. I have had so many students do that where they get frustrated, but if you stop and you don't go all the way through and really push yourself through this, you're never going to finish the painting, and you're never going to get better as an artist to be able to push and go through your craft. So at any time during this class you get frustrated and stressed out and your painting isn't looking quite the way that you would like it to look, take a break, walk away from your painting, allow the paint to dry completely, and then once the paint is dry completely, then start again. You'll notice that you'll have a better success rate in correcting any happy accidents that you might have had versus if you are working and adding paint to already wet paint. It's not going to adhere. So you're just going to move paint around. It's going to do a lot of blending on the canvas, which could possibly be more frustrating for the end result. So don't stress out. And if at any time I'm going way too fast, just pause the video. The brushes that I will be using today are a large square, a small Filbert Bright, which is pretty much just a small brush that isn't a round or a square. The bristles have been cut in an arc, so therefore it's kind of square and it's kind of round, and bright meaning that there are a lot of fibers that are put together and bound tightly, so it's a really thick brush. I will be using my liner brush. I love liner brushes. If you're having a hard time using your liner brush and you're stressing out on it, I recommend taking maybe, I don't know, your paper plate or just some paper and practicing a few strokes before you go and do some strokes on the canvas. When I was at the university, we actually took time where we would just sit at our table and practice moving the brush around and making lines and different things, kind of like when we were learning how to write the alphabet when we were really little. So practice with the liner brush and eventually you're going to get it and it'll be awesome. And if you have good success with using liner brushes, your paintings will be way cooler. I will be using a sad, cheap little big round brush. I like it because the fibers are very coarse, and it's going to do really good because when I have this brush and these are bent on the canvas, it's going to start making a random look for the snow with all these little fibers going in many directions. So if you don't have one of these, use one of your older brushes, whatever shape, whether it's a square or round, one of them that's really old and you would consider throwing it out. Go ahead and use those because the more frays we get, the better and the cooler our snow is going to appear. All right. Oh, I almost forgot. I also have fresh, clean water. I will be working with acrylic paint today, and I prefer using the pitcher because I have my little handle. It tapers in the middle, so spills are the shape of this pitcher. The spills are, if I just knock it over, it's not as, flimsy as just an wide open mouth cup. I do like how I have a little space here that I can use to bend the bristles. So, yeah. All right, so I think that's just about everything. So I think that a good idea is to start with the background first and then work our way to the foreground. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is on my palette, I'm going to add a little tiny bit of blue. I don't need a lot. There's very little amount. Don't waste your paint if you don't have to. All right, make sure that you close your lids so that way it doesn't dry in your tubes while you're working. All right, so now I have some really fresh, clean water here. I'm going to take my big square and I'm going to add water all over the canvas. It doesn't matter what direction you're moving the water in, just so as long as you have a healthy amount of water on the canvas. We want it moist and not soggy. So if you were working on a paper, I would recommend that you use less water. If you are working on a thick canvas, use more water. So now that I have about an even coating, what I'm going to do is with this same brush, I'm going to dip it into my blue and I'm going to make a big line. I'm making a big X on my canvas just to move paint around. Now I'm going to turn it into a star. We have a pretty cool star. So now I'm just going to swirl in circles and I'm going to move the paint around the canvas. By diluting the paint, it's going to start giving us a watercolored look. And that's the look I'm trying to go for. Go ahead and make circles and try to make sure you get all the paint before it dries so you can move it around a little bit. Now I'm going to go onto the sides and I'm going to add some color to the sides of my canvas. If you need to pull and bring some over, go ahead. Pull and bring some color over. I like to paint all my sides. All right, this is coming along really nicely. Maybe we can turn our canvas and look at it in a different angle, see what we like and what we don't like, and go ahead and just move the paint around. You can try to do some straight lines. I think I'm going to stay with the idea of the circle motion. I like how that looks, and when it dries, it just gives a lot of texture. So far, I'm liking what I see. I think it's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, when you're happy with the color, with what you have and the pattern, go ahead and allow yours to dry completely before we go on to the next step. So I'm going to take my brush really quick. I'm going to dip it in the water, and then I'm going to come over with my paper towel and I'm going to pull. With a slight bend on my brush, I see a tiny bit of blue is coming out, not much. So I'm going to dip it in the water again, slightly bending my bristles, but not too much, just a little. I'm going to double check over here, and yep, I don't have any blue coming out. So now I know that my brush is completely clean. All right. So to speed up the process of drying, I'm going to go ahead and use a hair dryer. Now be careful when using a hair dryer. If your painting is really super wet and you use a hair dryer, what happens is you can move the paint around and it might not be something that you like if you like where your color is. I'm just kind of going to let mine be to just let mine be. Whichever happens and however the paint moves around, I'm just going to let it happen. You can use the hair dryer for effects. So if I would, for example, want some lines to occur, I can use it at an angle, which is going to push the paint, and it's going to make little lines start appearing in different, and everything's going to be going in the direction that my the hair dryer is going. So I'm going to use my hair dryer, and I'm going to be up high with my hair dryer so that way I don't get a lot of movement within the paint. Now I've noticed that over here I have a lot going on with marks, but then kind of over here I don't have a whole lot. It kind of just, as it dried, a lot of the pigment just kind of seemed to blend together, and I see a lot of white, which is cool, but I think I'm going to go ahead and choose not to have so much white. So I'm going to add some more paint. I'm adding water right now. And just by moving my brush, I had dipped it in water, and now by moving it around, it's giving all these marks. Now isn't that a cool look? The more marks I have, the cooler it's going to look, like clouds and atmosphere. So that's activating the paint just a little bit, and I'm liking the look. And especially doing those circles. I'm getting a lot of brush strokes. But as the paint dries, those brush strokes are going to kind of go away a little bit. So we kind of have to go back and forth between letting it dry and then also applying the paint at the same time. It's a back and forth, and then finally we're going to get to a level that we like. Now I'm purposely going to choose not to add any more paint. As I'm drawing here and there, I'm going to go with my brush and I'm going to dip it in the water and just lightly go around in more circles and, you know, kind of just work with it. Almost like if it was a dough, and as I'm working with the dough, I'm going to add more flour and sugar to the mix, and until I finally get a consistency I would like. I'm going to take that principle and idea, and I'm going to do it to this. So let's go ahead and dry it for a few seconds and see what we come out with. And if we like it, we're going to stop. If we don't like it, we can always dip the brush back into the water. Right, so I've dried it. Still looking pretty cool, but now that I notice that I'm doing it, it's a little dark over here and it's really light over here, which is what I want. But I'm trying for a look that is a lot of different like hues within the white. So really dark blues and then some light blues. So I know I said I wasn't going to add more paint, but this is the beauty of art. We can always continue to change and move and continue to develop. So I'm going to go ahead, dip my water into the brush, come over with a little bit of paint, and I'm going to do some more circles by applying more paint. Now I do want to be careful that I get the diversity that I'm looking for. And at the same time, I don't want everything to just be a dark blue. I want there to be, I want to see some white areas, some light blue areas. Just mix it around, and I am trying to just continue to do circles. All right, so now I'm feeling that maybe, you know what, maybe there might be a little too much blue right now. So let's try to see if we can get some of that white to come back. So I dipped my brush in water, cleaned it off with the soap, dip it in more water, and now I'm just going to activate some of it. Not a lot of it. Maybe I dipped it again a second time into water. And I don't want to swirl too much because after a while, everything is just going to become a dark blue. Okay, so now I'm going to use my paper towel to wipe off all the water. And I'm going to come back and try to see if I can lift some paint out. Every couple of swirls, wipe it off with a dry, damp brush. See if I can get some more brush marks. The more brush strokes, the better. Ooh, I'm liking that. It's coming along really nicely. All right, this is looking really beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and take my hairdryer, and I feel that this might, for my painting, be as much as I need to work with this method. I'm liking what I see. So go ahead and dry your painting fully when you like what you see, what's on your canvas. Alright, so now my painting is completely dry. I want you to look at your painting and see what areas of your painting that you like and what that you don't. Now I'm trying to go for a big textured look, and I've noticed this part of my canvas has a lot more texture in it than this part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle my painting this way. And I'm going to have it orientated so his head is up here, his body's down here, and that way I can cover some of this area with snow. I'm not really liking this circle here. It's kind of random. I like cohesive, that is random cohesiveness, that it all kind of balances out, but yet they're still random, but they kind of balance throughout the painting. And I feel like I have a good representation of that on this side of the canvas. So that'll be my top. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to do the Grinch. He does seem very difficult, but I'm going to walk you through step by step, and really trust me, you're going to be able to paint this. I'm going to make it super basic and simple. Now, the more we fuss with it and the smaller brushes that you use while doing this process, the better, sharper image and the better quality image that you're going to get. So meaning, if you just use a huge, gigantic brush and you don't put a lot of detail into your work, yeah, he'll look like the Grinch, he'll be cute, but the details are what really make him come alive. Now I'm adding to my palette some green and a little bit of white, because I only have currently at the moment a tube of really dark green. So by adding the white to the green, it's going to lighten my green a lot. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to mix it and mix it and mix it until I get a nice bright minty green. Now you can paint the Grinch with a dark green. He's cute, but I feel that it's more true to the cartoon if we do a really light green. Now you can mix the fur between light green and dark green, which will make the fur even wower and cooler. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But just basically, to make it simple on yourself, he doesn't have a lot of definition to his fur in the cartoon. He's pretty much just the straight, he's one shade of green. So don't worry about having the right color, just as long as you get a light green. They should work just fine. All right, so I mixed it. I like what I got. I'm going to roll off some of that paint and clean off my brush. Now, I always like to, when I'm painting, have a clean brush and only dab the paint on the very tippy end of the brush. So that way I can make crisp, pretty lines. And when you do this, don't press too hard with your brush onto the canvas, otherwise you'll have a very thick line. So the first thing that I want to do is do a basic rough outline as to where he's going to reside. Now let's start with his belly. His belly's kind of a big one. So I'm going to do a circle right there. Now I'm going to go back up. I'm going to go up here just a little bit and do another circle, but it's going to be smaller than his belly. I'm going to also think he's got a hat too. So I'm not really liking what I see. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe off that green really quickly before it has a chance to dry. You don't have to. If you made a good circle and you like the placement, just leave it. But I'm going to go ahead and take off some of that color. There we go. I'm going to start at that circle again, and I think I'm going to judge to myself, where's the hat going to be? And then underneath where I want to put the hat is going to be the head. So I'm going to do it more about Mia. Just so a big circle and then a small circle. Now, because I made my head a little bit bigger, I think I might want to adjust my bottom circle. So that way my bottom circle is about 2 sizes bigger than my top circle. I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and fill it in. All right, so I've got a pretty good round circle. I'm going to do the same thing for the head. I'm going to fill it in. All right, so now that we have that, let's work on the legs. Now the leg, what I'm going to do, instead of making 2 individual legs, I'm just going to go ahead and make 1 leg. And then I'm going to go and cut it in the middle with a black line, and it'll appear later to be 2 legs. So this is just to make things easier on myself. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to make a straight line coming down. Almost like I'm making a popsicle. And then he's got feet, so I'm going to veer one over to the right and then another one to the left. So almost he looks like a mermaid tail. Now we're going to continue filling this in. The only reason we're doing this right now is so that way we can have a basic idea of where he's going to be. All right, so I've got 1 foot. Make sure that both feet are roughly around the same size. And they are a little curvy, so we want to think mermaid tail. All right, so now that I got the feet placed, I'm going to make his thigh a little bit bigger and turn it into a triangle on the left side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. Make a little bit of a triangle, and that's going to give me a thigh. Okay, so I'm going to give him a knee, and it's going to point out just a little bit onto the right, not much. And if I made it too big, I can come down here and make the thigh a little bit bigger. There we go. So far, so good. Okay, so now let's work on the head just a little bit. I gave him a round head, and then I'm going to come out and do like a heart. So I'm going to do the left side bump of a heart on the left side, and then I'm going to come back and do the right side as well. So I made a little heart, but it's almost like there's space in between the bumps. So one side has like a comma of the one side of the heart. The other side has a comma to the other side of the heart. So now I'm going to give him a little bit of a neck. I know he looks silly, but trust me, it's going to come together in the end. We're going to add a bunch of layers, and these layers are really what's going to make this happen. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add some red on my palette, and we're going to do the same basic idea where we get the outline and the rough draft of where he is, but instead of using the green, we're going to use some red. Okay, so now let's kind of block out what his body is. Now his body is a rectangle. So I'm gonna, it is like round, so it is a rectangle, but he does have kind of a disconnect. Almost like a snowman would be kind of rounded here. So do an upside down smiley face. And then over at the top by his neck, let's do a V underneath his neck. Okay, so now from that V, I'm going to make a straight line out, which is going to be his arm. And I'm going to go down to a little bit here, and then I'm going to cross that line back and come back in towards his body, and that's going to be the bottom part of his arm. Now I'm not going to paint the hand just yet. I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. I'm going to come down, and both elbows, if I were to draw a line this way, come to about the same place. And then I'm going to have that one come down again. So he's mirror imaging his arms. Okay, so from here, I'm going to finish. Remember how I said that his chest is kind of like a rectangle? I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. And I'm going to fill in the line to that rectangle of where his chest is. All right, so now let's go ahead and fill in the middle part of his shirt. Now, if I'm going too fast, don't stress out. Just pause the video, rewind. Don't worry, there's no rush to finish this painting in 5 seconds. So now I'm just going to go ahead and paint the inside of the shirt. I know he's not looking like much now, but trust me, we're going to adjust and adjust. We're just blocking out the basic idea of where he is. And then we're going to adjust. And the more adjustments we make, the better that we're going to get with the angles. Now, his forearm tends to be a little tiny bit bigger than the bicep, which this part of the arm tends to be twice as big as this area. And the same with the other side. The bicep, in somebody's arm, the bicep is always roughly around twice the size as the forearm is. All right, so far so good. It's coming along. Okay, now let's block out the hat. Now his hat is basically a triangle. So I'm going to come up here and make a triangle. And it's going to kind of swoop a little bit to the right, ever so slightly. And let's fill in that triangle. Now, if you have thin body paints, you might have to do this a second time to really cover up that blue. All right, so now that we have the triangle swooping to the right, we're going to swoop it back down and to the right. So we're going to make a swoosh to the right, and then it's going to come down just ever so slightly. That's going to give us some movement in the hat. Now with your triangle, I want you to imagine as you're painting, where is the white part and the soft part of his the hat and the jacket? Where are those white fluffy parts? And I want you to move the hat accordingly, so that way you can have those fluffy parts and make them make sense to the size and shape they need to be. So if you have to bring your triangle down just a little bit, do that. All right, so let's see. So this is the basic outline. Now I'm going to save his hands until the end to allow the red to dry fully. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wipe off my brush and clean it. Now I'm going to take a moment here and I'm going to completely dry the Grinch as much as I can, so that way I can do more layers. I recommend that you do the same thing. Now that I've dried the red really well, I noticed that my green is a little shiny, so it's not all the way dry yet. I'm going to go ahead and add some more red to my jacket to help cover up the blue that was underneath and to get it nice and bright and shiny. I recommend only adding the second coat after the first coat has completely dried. Doing that will ensure that in the long run you use less paint and it's quicker and straight to the point, and you'll get a better result because the paint will have an easier time sticking. If you'd like to, go ahead and turn on some Christmas music, some Grinch music, any kind of music really. The only reason I don't have music right now playing is because I have many students that take my class and everybody has different tastes and likes different things. So go ahead and put some music on, and I'm going to take a moment here and I'll be quiet for a minute so you can hang out and be social and have a good time. And I'm just going to finish painting the red to give it another layer. When I'm done doing that, I'm going to go ahead and use my hair dryer to dry it fully. I recommend you do the same thing, and then we will be on to the next step. Are you ready for the next step? The next step is a really fun one. So now what I'm going to do is take some paint, white paint, and I'm going to add it to the center of my palette. That is a designated area that I like to add the white paint. It helps me to keep my palette very organized. I'm going to take my small filbert bite, or if you don't have one of those, take a small round brush. I'm going to dip it into the white paint, and then I'm just going to do a dot, and there you have it, a snowflake. So I'm going to look for spaces and places in my painting that I'm just not really liking it. I don't feel that there was a whole lot of diversity with the color. So I'm going to use those spots to make little dots and cover up some of my boo-boos. The more dots that you add around the painting, the more your paint's going to look, your painting is going to look as though there's a big snowstorm. I do like to have random chaos. So I like it in my paintings when the right side does not match the left exactly, however it still kind of looks like a random chaos that's sort of even. I'm going to go ahead and paint some on the side of my canvas. I like to have the look of the wraparound painting. All right. While I have this little tiny brush in hand, I'm going to go ahead and give him some fur around his outfit. So, right where the neck and the belly and the tassels on the hat are, this is where I'm going to add white. So around the belly. So I'm going to try to go a little bit under the red, so I'm covering up some of the blue. And I'm going to make little dots. If you cover up some of the red, that's okay. I'm trying to kind of cover up and thinking about the spaces between his jacket. And there's kind of like a triangle space here where you think there would be body, but I didn't really paint any body. And I'm going to come back over and make the right side the same as the left. I'm just going to have random dots. Now I'm choosing not to do any swooshes at all. I'm just going to do dotting. Lots of different dots. And I want this thickness on the right to mimic the thickness on the left. And I want it to be very bumpy with the lines. I don't want a straight line that comes across. Really bumpy with those lines. The bumpier, the better. Just keep working it until you got something you like. I'm going to do the same thing now around the neck. And I'm kind of going to keep the idea of a V. If you cover up a little bit of the neck, that's okay. Just try to remember to keep some of the neck. We want to see that there is a defined neck. And likewise, I don't want a straight line. I want it to be very super random bumpy. The more random bumpy, the better. So I'm going to do the same thing with the arms. Oh, you know what? Actually, let's paint the hands before we paint white around the arms. So let's leave the hands till the end of the painting. I'm going to come over here and do one little swoosh. Instead of a dot, I made one little swoosh at the tip of the hat. Let's see, and that's about it for that. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I could add some more paint at the bottom of the jacket. So go until you're happy with the fluffiness that you have. Just remember to keep it very bumpy on the edges. Then it'll look extra fluffy if you do that. Ooh, he's looking cute. You're doing a good job. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with mine, so I'm going to say that's pretty good for the moment. Now that horrible sad brush that I have that has the really thick fibers, I'm going to use that brush. It's a lot thicker. It's a round with thick fibers, so use a brush that you would typically just throw away that you've kind of destroyed a little bit and has fibers going in a lot of different directions. And I'm going to go ahead and tap it out on the bottom. Now I like to start and tap out the edge because it's giving me a little bit of a practice and a warm-up. And I'm going to do a technique called stippling, where it's basically just tapping the brush. So I'm not doing any swooshes, and I am pressing a tad bit hard, just a little bit, enough to allow the bristles to kind of go out into all the different directions. And what this is going to do is give it some texture. I'm going to do it a little bit on the side. And a little bit on the other side. Just tapping. Don't go up too high. Alright, so now that I have the sides done pretty cool, I'm going to set it down. And now I'm going to take a moment and kind of just do the bottom of where his feet are. So he's got a little mound of snow here right under him, and that's what he's stepping on. It's okay to go over his feet a little bit sparingly, just so you kind of don't have like a sharp edge and it looks like there's quite a bit of snow. And he's standing in very white, fluffy snow. Okay, so now with that mound, I'm going to kind of make it come down a little bit. And then I'll make it go back up just a little bit on the corner. I want the edges to be very, like, not straight lines. A lot of fluffiness going on. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to try to vary the land. Almost a mirror image. Not quite, though. One could go up a little higher than the other, just so I have diversity. Most of what I'm looking for is diversity. That's good. Now I'm gonna do what's called hyper-realism, where I'm not gonna put in a lot of detail and I'm just gonna let it be white. Now, oftentimes if we do like realism and we're trying to make the painting look as though it's a photograph, we would want to add a lot of shadows and do a lot of blending. But this is a cartoon, So because it's a cartoon, I'm not really going to put a lot of effort in trying to make like these shadows and everything. I'm just going to make it like fantasized of the snow. I'm making sure, I made sure that my edges are not a crisp, clear edge. So it's like just kind of random fluffiness everywhere. And that'll be that for the ground. It's coming along really nicely. You're doing a good job. Okay, so we have the hands and we have the face. Before we do the face, let's go ahead back into our small little round again. Take a moment, wash it to get some of that paint off. Sometimes if we just keep painting with the same color, the paint will dry on our bristles, and that could it could ruin our brush, and then it'll be all thick when we're painting and they won't really bend that well. Let's go ahead and wash your brush. And I forgot on my painting to do right here under the hat. So I'm going to take a moment and oops, oh, I got a little buggy. Had a little bug that came to play on my painting. Okay, so I'm going to dot his hat. First, I'm going to do the line straight across, but I'm going to do dots, okay? And then make them random, just like how we dotted in the other areas. I'm going to do that here. And I'm going to make the edges so that way they're not pretty and they're very, I want them really bumpy. It's looking very nice. All right, so now let's work on the face. I'm going to go ahead and take out my liner brush. I feel that using a liner brush is going to make this painting a little bit easier when we go to do these little parts. So I see that there's a lot of wet paint on my canvas, and I don't want to accidentally rest my hand down or my arm down while I'm painting and move around paint and get it all smeary. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to dry everything on my painting. So, and also if I have a boo-boo and everything is dry at this point, I can hurry up and wipe up the wet paint if I have a boo-boo, and then the paint underneath will still be good and it'll be saved, and it's a good way to erase. But it only works, like it only works if what's underneath is completely dry first. So take your hair dryer and let's dry the painting. looking really good. You're doing a great job. All right, so let's take out our liner brush, and I'm gonna add a little bit of black to my palette. Now, I don't need a lot, just the smallest, tiniest amount. Less is more with black. Now, with my liner brush, I'm gonna work on the face. Now, what makes the face extra special is he's got a special little mouth to him. Very identifiable, and this is really what's going to bring them together to start really looking like the Grinch. Okay. Now I'm going to dip my paint into the black, and it liner brushes, trust me. Smaller, the skinnier, pointier brush you have, the better this is going to be. Now his mouth is the shape of a V. So what we want to do is we're going to start on one side and work on the other. So we're going to V, and then at the top of each V's, we're going to do a frowny face. It's going to be his cheek. A little frowny face. Now, if you need to turn your canvas to make sure you do it right, go ahead and turn your canvas. There we go. Go ahead and take a quick moment and touch up your V. Make sure it's kind of pointy at the bottom. We don't want a U, we want a V. Oh no. Oops, that's okay. I added too much black. You want to know how we fix it? Go in with a brush with some water and wipe up some of that black. I do it really quickly, and see what happens. Since I dried the face a whole lot, I'm able to wipe off that paint, the black paint and the green underneath. Since it was all the way dry, it comes right off. But you got to work really quick, and each time, every wipe I do, I come back to my paper towel and I wipe my brush on the paper towel to get the excess paint off. Okay, so now let's do that again. Wash my liner brush, dip it in the black, and work on his mouth to make it a letter V. Take your time. Now, if you do it all in one pass, that's even better. If you can do it in one pass and get a really nice strong line. Sometimes it helps me if I take a quick second and I stop talking and I hold my breath for just a moment. Sometimes I get better results. It's looking great. All right, so now that we have that, let's go over here and work on his eyes. Now he's got really big, you know what? There's one more for the mouth. One more. We're gonna do, make sure your paint's all dry before you lay your arm down or anything. He's got a little bit of a curve right here, ever so slightly. So it's a hardly bended comma. So a comma that's not that bendy. Now at the top of the comma is a little tiny circle, and that's his nose. So we just want to outline the nose only, just an outline. Okay, now let's work on the eyes. The first thing I'm going to do is his eyebrows, because they're big and thick. So he's kind of got a scheming look on his face. So they kind of swoosh up into the right, and then the left one is going to swoosh up and go to the left. So I'm going to turn my canvas here to make it easier for me for a second. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you up close in the camera what I have so far. Here you go, is an up close look as to what I'm doing. Take your time, remember to breathe. Sometimes doing skinny tiny lines, it helps if you hold your breath. So we want a V, two, and then at the end of the tops of the two V's, we want two frowny faces. Then we want a comma in the middle of the V. And then at the top of the comma, we want a circle. We don't want to fill in the circle. And then we kind of, for the eyebrows, we want another V, but the ends don't touch in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the face. I'm going to take my liner brush out, make sure it's a nice pretty point. If your black paint's dry, you could add a tiny bit of water to thin it out, and it might be easier to add it on and get skinny lines than using thick paint. Okay, so now I'm going to do the bottom part of the eyelid, which is basically another smiley face. So I'm going to go end to end, but I do want to give him a little lashes. So I'm going to start at the bottom part of the V and swoosh it and make a smiley face, but I'm not going to go all the way to the top. So let me do the other side. I'm going to turn the canvas to make it easier on myself. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start at the base, the bottom of the eye. I'm going to swoosh down and back up. Here's what I did. So I kind of filled it in. Do you see how the eyes now? It's almost like almost as if there's a circle now. Remember to keep him to have some lashes. He wants lashes. Okay. So that is the basic idea. Now we need to do the inside of the eye. I do want to give that a minute to dry first before I go adding like the white and everything of the eyes. So let's go ahead and do some other lines. Now we have one leg here. We want to do a line to make it so that there are two legs. So I'm going to start from where the ankles are. And now the snow is kind of covering some of my foot. And I want to make like indentation of this circle. So I want to make a little line that's horizontal here. That would be where if I were to draw a line around the circle, I've got a little line here so I can know where to stop with my other line. I'm going to come down here with the ankle in the very middle, and I'm just going to pull it up, and I'm going to go up. That's about it. So there I have a definition of two legs. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a quick moment and outline some things. And I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to outline the bottom part of his body on the outside. This is really going to help him to pop. It's going to make him very cartoony, and it's going to turn it into pop art, which is the look that I'm trying to go for. If you don't want to outline, you don't have to. I'm going to be very gentle with everything and just take my time. Where there is snow covering the foot, I will not add any black. It's just only parts that are not being covered by snow. So far I'm just doing the legs, don't do the body yet. There's some cool things we're going to do with the body, so just work on the legs. Okay, so when you've completed the legs, I'm going to continue the round part of the circle. However, I'm going to give him some little bit of fur. So I'm going to start in here on the side. And I'm going to kind of come in a little bit to the circle and then back out to the outside. I'm going to follow that around to the leg, and I'm going to pass the leg just a little bit with the black. So I have it where right here I've passed a little bit of the leg line, and then I kind of indented at the side. Now I'm going to bring this one down, and it's not going to come in contact with the end of this top line that I've made over here. All right. So now let me show you what I have going on in the right side of the belly here. Do you see how I've kind of indented? So right here, I've indented a little bit. I made an extra line come in, and then I made that line over here come in just a little bit. And now I have like a little bit of his fur coming out. So I'm kind of going to do the same thing to the other side. I want it to be asymmetrical. So I want it to be the same, but it's kind of off a little bit. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to follow the line all the way on the left side around the edge of his body. There. So now that I have the edge of his body, I'm going to come to where the round circle and the leg meets, and I'm going to do a sideways smiley face comma. That's just going to show movement, that there's a muscle right there. See what I've done? I got a little tiny comma where the leg is. So these little tiny indents are just really going to show the Grinch a whole bunch. So now let's do the same thing. Let's do a little bit on his face. So I'm starting on the right side of his face, and where his chin is, I'm going to come around. I'm just doing the side of the face. And I'm going to come up and around. Remember that part where we made like a heart shape? Come up and around the chin. Okay, so now I'm going to do the neck. And I do want the line for his chin to come a little bit past where I have the neck. So check out his face. See how that line of the half heart where it comes down past the neck just ever so slightly. So now he's going to have a little bit of fur. So he's going to have 2 spikes on the right side, 2 indents. See what I've done with the side where his eye is? He's got 2 little like spikes coming out. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side of his face. Now be careful, you have wet paint on your canvas right now, so don't be putting your hand down all over the place because you don't want to smear anything. So he's got the same thing on the right side. He's got two little spikes and we want to follow the face down. So just to make it simpler on myself, since I'm mirroring, this left side is going to mirror and be exactly like the right side. I'm going to go ahead, take a moment and turn my canvas to make it easier on myself. And go down for the neck. So here, I'm going to show you a close-up of my face. There we go. Now I got it all outlined. All right, so that's pretty much it. We can come in here and give him some, let's see, what do we want to do? So many different choices. I think I'm going to call it quits for his face for the moment. Now I'm going to take his jacket and outline that as well. You know what? No, let's work on the hat. I'm going to outline the edges of his hat. And you're going to notice that this outline just really makes it pop. So I'm outlining the red area. All right, so now that I've outlined the hat, I'm going to go over here and give a little indent to show the fold in the fabric. So at the very top of where the hat is kind of bent over, I'm going to do a swoosh, and then under it I'm going to do a slightly smaller swoosh. Now this is going to make it appear as though the fabric has moved. So check out the hat and what I've got. I outlined the red area and then I put two swooshes on the right side underneath where the hat bends over. This puts like a little bit of a shadow. All right, so from here, let's see, I'm going to wash my liner brush, get all the black paint out. I'm going to use that brush to do the whites of the inside of the eyes. So I'm going to take some white and I'm going to dab it into the inside of where the whites of the eyes would be. All these little details are what's going to make him look extra cool and special. Okay, so look, we're going to need to allow that to dry before we add the inside of the eye. So let's go ahead and work on the hands for a moment. Now I'm going to choose to use the liner brush for this because the hands are very delicate and little. So I'm going to go ahead and with the green that I have, it should still be moist. If your green is not moist right now, like if you're in a very dry climate, Go ahead and add a tiny bit of water to your paint and mix it in with your paint, and that'll loosen up your paint a little bit. Now, the hands really are not tricky, so don't stress out about this part. Okay, so I'm going to make a straight line for where his wrist would be. So it's pretty much a square right here at the end. And then I'm going to make a line that's like a half a box. So watch this line. It's coming down to the right, and that's going to be one of his fingers, and then I'm going to bend it again, and that's going to be, well, it's his pinky finger. Okay, so check out what I have with the hand so far. Do you see the shape that I made? I made a box, and then I made two lines, almost like I'm going around in a circle. Okay, so now for the other fingers. I'm going to use those lines as a reference, and I'm going to cover up some of the red here, and it's going to be other fingers. So really I've kind of made myself another square. But these fingers, they kind of come out and around to the other side. I'm going to have two. So really I'm only seeing like 3 fingers. There we go. So I ended up having 2 rectangles next to each other and then 2 fingers kind of sticking out. Now we're still going to add more to make them individual, and we're going to add some more details, but it's going to be a building process. We're going to add layers. So it's pretty much almost identical on the other side. We're going to add that rectangle for where the wrist is. And then we're going to add that box, the other box that's right next to it. And then we want the 2 little fingers sticking out. I'm only going to add 2 fingers on this side just because I'm liking the look. So here's the other hand. So it's pretty much 2 rectangles together and then 2 lines sticking out of the rectangles. All right, so we're going to let that dry before we add more detail. So let's see, let's outline the jacket with some black. Go ahead and wash your liner brush, get all that green out. Okay, so right now I'm just going to, the only thing I'm going to do is outline the black. I'm going to outline the jacket, the red part only. This is when you can take a moment and adjust the arms if you need to. If you feel that you've made the bottom forearm part a little bit too skinny or too fat, you can use the black to kind of hide the shape a little bit, make it look skinnier or fatter, whatever you need. Just adjust your lines accordingly. So it's almost an optical illusion. If you need the arm to be skinnier, then put the line over the red. If you want the red to be a little bit fatter, put the line over the blue paint. So then the eye's going to fill it in. If some of your lines end up being thicker than others, that's even a better idea because then it has depth in the picture. Oh, he's coming out so cute. Those lines just really make a difference in the painting. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add little bits of detail that's just going to give it some oomph. So at his elbow, he's got two little lines that come in because the fabric is kind of thick. Like it bends right there at the elbow. His other elbow does the same thing, except for they're more of like a Y. So it's almost like a Y here. So check out his elbows and see how I've made them. They're the same. They have the inside lines kind of come out just ever so slightly. On the left side, it makes like the letter Y. And on the other side, it's just two straight lines that come out. It's going to show the fabric and the folds in the fabric. Now his elbows are quite pointy. So when I was painting, I wasn't really thinking about that a whole lot, which, I'm going to come out here and just make it really pointy and not rounded with my black. Make it extra pointy. Okay, so now for the armpit on the left side, just how we did a Y on the one side, I'm going to do a Y on the other side. On both sides of that arm, on the left side, look at that. I've got a Y going on both of them at the ends of the line. It's going to give another part like the fabric's moving a little bit. Okay, so now coming along really nicely, doing a good job. That's about it. I mean, we could do a little line on this armpit where it kind of on the right side where it comes up just ever so slightly, just a little bit. So both are like the one on the right has only one little line coming up and the one on the left has two. And that's pretty much it for the jacket. If you wanted to, you could. I'm choosing not to for my painting. You could outline all the little white fluffy areas, but I'm feeling that I'm just going to let mine be a little bit natural and to not add all those extra little details. Like of doing the outline for the hat. I mean, you always could, and it could be really cute. Which maybe I'm thinking I'm talking myself into it. Okay, let's see. My hands aren't all the way dry. I'm going to take a hairdryer really quick to dry them. I do want to add some little black lines to make the hands a little bit more defined. So take a hairdryer and dry your painting. take a quick second. As I was drawing the painting, I was thinking to myself, we should do a little line on the ankles. On the right side, I'm going to do a line, and then on the left ankle, more like the foot area, I'm going to do another little line just to give some more movement. So check out the feet and what I did here. I got a little line right there coming into the foot, and then I got another one for the ankle right here. So that way it's going to give a little bit more movement. Okay, so now with the hands. Now here's what's really going to sell the hands and make them happen. I'm going to outline the outside of the hand. I'm going to let it come all the way around. I'm going to do the same on the other hand. I'm outlining the green that's touching the red. So now I'm going to do like the fingers. So the individual marks of like where the fingers would be. Like between the fingers. And I'm also going to outline the other side of the hand as well. So pretty much all the way around everything gets outlined, and then the inside of the hand where he would have like marks in his hand where it would be shadows where the hand is kind of rounded, we want to identify the different little fingers. So check it out. I did less is more. Just look at my hands. Did just a couple little lines. I outlined the around the hand, and then inside I just kind of identified one or two fingers and just did a mark to let it show up and be distinct and different. I didn't go with a whole lot of detail. I just kind of let it be. I was very light with it. All right, so from here, we're almost all the way done. You're doing a really good job. All right, so now I'm going to do the eyes. I'm going to do a dot with black, and I'm going to make it more towards the inside, where the eye is. I'm going to dot the inside closer to the nose area on that one. Now the left eye, I'm going to kind of move it a little bit and dot it to the right a little bit. So he's going to appear as though he's looking off to the left. So here are my eyes. Take a look. See how they're not quite to the center? The left one is more towards the inside, closer to the nose, and then the left one is more towards the left. But I can see white on both sides of the left eye, the iris. So the middle of the eye, I can see black, but then on both sides I see white when it comes to the eyeball that is on the left side of the face. The other one that's on the right side of the face, I only have white on one side of it. So that's going to make him as though he's appearing off into the distance. Now I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to do a couple little spikes on the side of his cheek to give him a little bit more like he's got fur. So I'm going to come in just ever so slightly a couple of times. If If you don't like what you have, you can wash it off really quickly before the paint dries. I didn't like what I have. So what I'm doing is I'm adding water to my brush. I'm wiping it around, letting that paint get a little bit wet. Then I'm using my paper towel, wiping off the paint from the brush. And I'm going to come back in with the dry, clean brush and kind of pick up that paint. This is a great way to erase when it comes to painting. This only works if the bottom part of your painting is completely dry. Otherwise, you're going to lift up that paint as well. I'm going to keep going. You have to do it. You only get really a few seconds to really do this before it starts drying. Every so often, make sure you add some water to your brush, just ever so slightly, to add a little bit of water onto the canvas using the brush. And then take the brush, dry it off on the paper towel, then come back into the canvas and try to wick it up. Okay, so I'm going to try it again. So remember how we added little spikes on the left side of the cheek? I'm going to add just one. So I'm going to add one little swoosh right here. See what I got going on in the side cheek? How many swooshes I added that kind of came in from the outside and come in towards the face. 2 little swooshes. Now that's going to give it a look as those spiky hair. I only did it to one side. I'm not going to do it to the other, so by doing that, he'll appear to have his head angled just ever so slightly if I only do it to one side. This is pretty much it, the end of the painting. You did a really good job. I was thinking about adding some extra stars and making it extra cool. You could do that. You could stop here if you wanted to. I'm going to take a quick moment here, and I ran out of white on my palette. I'm going to add a little bit more paint to my palette. Don't do it if you already have enough palette white on your paint that you don't need to add more. And I'm just going to give myself a second coat of dotting white around areas where he's got the fluffiness. I see that some of my red is kind of see-through, like that area. I can see some of that red through the fluffiness. So I'm kind of caking it on a little bit, and I'm just gonna fluff it up. Remember to keep those edges nice and bumpy, lots of bumpy details. I'm just trying to cover up where I see that the red is really showing through. I'm going to do the same down here on the vest. I can see just a little bit of red. But remember, we don't want any straight lines because we want it to be very fluffy. I'm going to do a little bit down here with the jacket. All right, it's coming along really nice. I'm liking it. Okay, so we need to add some little fluffy parts around his wrist. So let's go ahead and do that. Little dots. Remember to make them bumpy. So all I'm doing is doing dots. I'm not swooshing or wiping or swooshing anything. Just dots. There we go. And doesn't he look so cute? Oh, you're doing good. This is awesome. Now to make the stars in the background a little bit more oomph-y, let's go ahead and I'm going to use my liner brush again. This has been a really good class for practicing and working with little skinny lines. It's a really good class for that. Okay, so there are many ways we can do it. We can keep them dotty. You can take a brush and tab and let the paint splatter. But for this one, I'm going to be more specific with what I want. So I'm going to make like shooting star looks. So I'm going to go somewhere in my painting, and what I'm going to do with my liner brush, so I'm going to make like a cross. So I make a horizontal line, and then I'm going to make a vertical line. So I made a cross, and then I'm going to come in with a tiny little line, and I'm going to X out that cross in the middle. So I do a little tiny extra cross. Here's a close-up of my painting so you can see what I mean. It's basically two X's. One X is right over the other X. I've allowed the bottom line to be slightly longer than the top, just to give it, I don't know, a twinkly type of effect. And I'm going to go here onto the left side and do the same thing. I'm going to find a spot that I'm liking, that I think would be a cool area to have my thing, and then I'm going to do the cross again. So I'm going to make a vertical line, and then a horizontal line, and then I'm going to make a little X. Now check out how this one is just a tad bit thicker on this side compared to the other one. Do you see the difference in thickness? By having the difference of thickness and the points, the one on the left seems to be a little bit rounded compared to the one on the right, they have personality with their twinkle. So I'm going to go ahead and add just a couple more. And I'm going to add two other ones that are going to be slightly smaller. I'm going to do one up here. And I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. That way I have a difference in depth. I need to turn my canvas to make it a little easier for myself. Liner brushes makes doing this so much easier. Now see he's a little smaller, tiny little guy. So right now I have 3. Could add a couple more if we wanted to. You could add a shooting star, which is basically just, if you want a shooting star, you would just make a dot, and then you would make a little line that just swooshes off. I think I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. You know what I could do? Since I do have my liner brush, I could make a couple more little dots randomly and make them smaller dots. So that way some of my little snowflakes are gonna be big and thick and big ones, and then other ones are tiny little guys. So I'm going to add more snowflakes, but just really little ones so I can see a difference between size and a lot of variety. The more variety, the better. Ooh, that's coming together really beautiful. So we want big round circles, and then some we want tiny little skinny ones. The more variety you put in sizes of snowflakes, the cooler your painting is going to start becoming. It'll also show depth in the sky, that some snowflakes are far away and others are bigger. So now that you've done little ones, maybe you want to touch up some of your other ones to make them a little bit bigger. So go ahead and make some extra bigger dots in some places where you think, yeah, maybe it would be better if that one was just a little bit larger. I think, though, it looks better if we have just a couple big ones and we have a whole bunch of little ones. I feel that the snow just, it's more snowier. Ooh, what a fun painting. I just love painting. This is such my happy time of day. I'm like totally in the holiday spirit now. Thank you so much for hanging out and painting with me. I love hanging out and painting with other people. I hate doing it by myself. It's just so much funner to have a buddy. So here is a close-up view of my snowflakes. See all the extra little differences between them? Yeah, lots of cool snowflakes. Well, if you would like to, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but if you would like to share your finished painting, I would love to see it. I'm totally excited. I want to see how cool you made your painting. So please send me like a link in social media, like I'm all over Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those places. Just put it on there and hashtag me. Send me a link so I can see it. And if you don't want the world to see it and you just want to show me, send me an email and I won't share it or anything. And so I just want to see how cool and how awesome your painting came out. And I guess I'll see you for the next one. I do have other painting classes that I've done about the Grinch where I've talked about more about fur and stuff and different little things because, you know, each painting, I want them to be unique and a little bit different, and everybody, and like each painting have its own little story that it tells. So check out my other Grinch paintings, especially the Max. He's really cute. I totally, you know, Max is the puppy that is the helper of the Grinch. So those two paintings would go side by side really well together on the wall. They would look really awesome like a set. And so I will see you next time. Happy painting!